Hi everyone, welcome back to Battlefield 1 multiplayer. Today we're going to be talking about tanks. There are 4 types of tanks in this game. There's the heavy tank, which I'm driving now, the light tank, the artillery truck, and of course the land ship, which we won't see any of in this video because driving it in multiplayer is kind of a crapshoot, as is gunning it. That said, similar to how guns are treated in this game, you have your type of tank, and then you have different varieties of that tank that come with different sets of loadouts and abilities and so on. So for example, I am driving a normal heavy tank right now. It means I have 2 machine guns on either side and a machine gun in the back. There's a version of this tank that replaces one of the machine guns on either side with a flamethrower. Very useful if you're going to be fighting basically nothing but infantry. And that's kind of the idea. Each one of the different varieties of each type of tank has a different purpose in a lot of ways. So there's the flanker version of the light tank, and there's the anti-air version of the artillery truck, one of which I just blew up right there. He was actually a regular infantry, whatever, don't worry about it. One of the other changes that DICE made in this game with how tanks work is how they spawn. Now, in previous Battlefield games, you had a bunch of tanks arrayed on the map, and you can just either run up to them or spawn right into them directly, and you'd retain the class that you had selected before when you jumped in. In this game, it works a little differently. You work on something called a token system, and that is to say your team has a number of tanks it's allowed to have on the map. You select a token when it's available, and then you select the type and variety of tank you want to use, and then it spawns in with you in the pilot seat in a unique class. There are pilot classes in this game for both tanks and planes. I'm just going to call them pilot classes in general. They're really meant not to be used as infantry classes. You're really supposed to go down with the ship with this thing. It's supposed to prevent people from using planes as taxis and everything like that, but people still do it, believe me. By the way, fuck planes. The class means that you can actually repair from the driver's seat, which is pretty great. If you're a support class who happens to have a repair tool, you can do that as well. But yeah, you're really meant to, stay with the ship here and not let a support, drive your tank around. So yeah, just don't get out of the tank. It's a very easy concept. Don't give it to the other team or anything.
We have taken objective button.
Tanks are very powerful, but they do have limited ammo. You have to reload your ammo pool. As you can see here, I ran out, and so I had to reload. And with the heavy tank, you get 6 rounds. With the artillery truck, you get 5 rounds, 4 rounds for the light tank, and 5 rounds for each sponson on the land ship, which is pretty generous. 5 is about what it takes to kill a heavy tank with the artillery truck we're seeing here. And by the way, I like the artillery truck a lot, but I play with the heavy tank way more because I like being able to bring basically half a team onto a point if I need to. But the artillery truck's fun because, well, for one, it's got that rear cannon that you saw me using a second ago, but it's also got this heavy machine gun on the front that just mulches infantry. In a lot of ways, if you need to be able to just go around on your own and do a lot of work, taking out vehicles, taking out positions, and killing infantry, the artillery truck's the way to go, though most people will end up using the light tank, which I feel is kind of wrong-headed. The artillery truck's a little bit faster, which is nice. It just does not have 360-degree range with the heavy gun on front, but it does have 360-degree range with its rear gun there. I keep calling it a rear gun, but it's really the 2-slot. It's the explosive cannon, the Horowitz, or whatever you want to call it. So it's pretty fantastic from that regard. It can also zoom in when it fires from the cannon, so that is very helpful as well. So you can kind of do a little bit of tank sniping. Now, this is really one of the more interesting things. With the artillery truck, it's got some pretty weird combinations. So this is just the stock standard one, which is my favorite fucking thing. But there is a version of it that is meant to be used for anti-air. It's just the AA version of the artillery truck. And there is a version of it that is meant to be used as a mortar position. So you can basically just fire mortars downrange. I really just like this basic version of it. It also comes with mines. So if you rush up to a point, because this thing's faster than a lot of vehicles in this game, if you rush up to a point, throw down your mines, and then back up, oftentimes you'll get some pretty early vehicle kills, or at least damage other vehicles very quickly. So it's pretty fantastic in that regard. Now, it is a single-seater, which means that, well, you can't bring other people with you where you go with it, which is unfortunate. And it does have a little bit of a height limitation Fuck that thing, by the way. You can't aim this thing as high as, say, the heavy tank, which is kind of unfortunate. By the way, fuck planes. Did I say that before? I should say that a lot more often. People who use anti-air trucks confuse me because you can just hit things with this pretty well. It's got a pretty clean sight line. So, that said, I love the artillery truck. It's great. The 5 rounds on it, the 5 rounds for the cannon, most of the time you'll be able to take people out pretty effectively with it, I feel. And not really a big problem, but sometimes if you run into a heavy tank or something like that, it's best to run away. And the artillery truck is oddly suited to that. It moves pretty quickly in most directions except for rearwards. And here we go with the heavy tank. This is my most used vehicle in this game, hands down. It's pretty great because its main cannon is always going to be split between having a heavy or high explosive and, of course, the canister shot you're seeing here, which is an anti-infantry weapon. But you can use the heavy, or I keep saying heavy, but it's really high explosive against infantry, just as effective as anything else. Yeah, there's not a lot more to say about the heavy tank. There is a 100-degree view radius that you have on the front, so you can't see everything. You gotta rotate the tank, and it is kind of slow in that regard. And so you have to be wary of that fact. But if you have gunners, they should be taking out infantry. You should only really have to worry about other tanks if you have a gunner on either side. And you can see here, it just takes people out. And the fact that it has 6 rounds in, if you want to call it magazine, but it has 6 rounds in the magazine in the heavy tank means that you can take out another heavy tank and deal with any infantry that may be disgorged from such a vehicle. That said, it's a big target, it's a slow target, and so you have to be a little bit careful about where you are and that you don't get stuck or you don't get caught in something of an ambush or anything like that, because they are going to be gunning for you, as you can see here. Now, one of the weird things about the heavy tank, though, and kind of interesting about it, is that it more than other vehicles in this game, maybe the land ship is a little bit better about it, will occasionally just not take damage when it gets shot with an explosive. I don't know what to say about that. Hey, I jumped out of the tank. As you can see there, you actually have to go through an animation to get into vehicles. You can be shot during that animation and die. So yeah, don't get out of your tank. Anyways, yeah, for some reason, sometimes shells just glance off of these things. So I think on at least one occasion in this video, you'll see me get a 2-point hit. That guy just slid in there, I forgot that happened. You'll see me get a 2-point hit on a heavy tank, where it just takes 2 points of damage and no more. That's not a bug so much as it's a feature. I don't know. That was actually how some things worked in Battlefield 4 as well. But yes, the varieties of the heavy tank are probably my favorite thing. There's a variety that, instead of having 2 machine guns on either side, it has 1 grenade launcher on either side. And if you angle yourself just right, your gunner can actually help you take out armor. And you can save a couple of rounds to take out people, or maybe take pot shots at planes like I like to do. You know, a lot of options with this thing. I also feel like its varieties are the most samey because the main gun on this thing is always going to be split between the heavy, the high explosive and the canister shot, which is a little different because I believe that both on the sponsons for the land ship and of course the light tank, the versions of that will actually have different options for its main cannon, whereas this thing is just always the same. It's the side guns that are the difference makers. One other thing I do want to mention is that this thing is fantastic if you want to get people to go take points. If you're like me and you are basically obsessed with winning games and standing on objectives, and your team doesn't want to do it, if you happen to get into a heavy tank, people will spawn on you thinking they have free kills, and you will be able to capture basically any objective you want to because you're going to be bringing up to 6 people onto an objective. This is the light tank. I don't really like the light tank that much. Light tanks are faster, they're a bit more maneuverable than the heavy tank. They can rotate 360 degrees instead of the 120 degrees on the heavy tank. But at the same time, they have the weakest armor. They can take the fewest shots, basically. You can see there, I just went down to almost no health in just a couple of hits. And Also, interestingly, well, actually, I forgot I switched over to gunning for a heavy tank, but you can see what your range of view is. It's pretty decent. Right here, you're actually seeing a heavy tank get disabled on the side. Getting disabled is not a death sentence, but it does require the pilot to repair the tank from within to fix your guns. Otherwise, they're basically useless during that period. You can see. Anyways, light tank, I'm just not a fan. People use that thing to great effect, especially the flanker version, which gives you more shots from the main cannon, but they're weaker shots, and they're really meant to take out infantry rather than take out other vehicles. But if they get behind or besides a heavy tank, oh man, they've basically just taken the thing out already. That said, people love the light tank in this game. It is probably the most used version of it, any tank in the game. People, you can really, if you position yourself well, sit back a bit, and are careful with it, you can go on some huge kill streaks with any tank in the game. But because the light tank is a single-seater, and because it has that 360-degree view, it tends to have the best survivability because it doesn't rely on side gunners the way the heavy tank does here, and it doesn't have the issue with its infantry killing ability on its being only to its front, like on the artillery truck. The ability to repair tanks from the driver's seat because of, pilot abilities, it is probably one of the more controversial changes DICE made to this game, just because, well, that means that there's no real sense of teamwork. You don't need a support to show up and fix you, and you don't need to risk yourself by getting out of the tank to repair it. At the same time, the fact that you're completely immobilized and unable to shoot while you're repairing means that you are kind of stuck in place. You can try to run away, but if you have a blown tread on the land ship or the light tank or anything like that, and you try to do that, you're pretty fucked. So a little bit more light tank, but let's talk about the land ship. It relies almost completely on you having good side gunners or a good driver. And I find that most of the time the stars don't align on that. It just does not happen. And so that's why I avoid it in multiplayer. I did actually try to get some video of it, and it just did not work out. There, fuck that guy. But yeah, I would say that overall I do like the heavy tank a lot if I need to bring people onto a point, get them to do certain things. But if I have to pick, almost every time it's the artillery truck. It's just much faster, which is great. It means that on maps like Mount Grappa, or on this map, if you have to go up to the sea point on Sinai here, you can actually get up the hill very quickly. And sometimes speed is a little bit better than survivability or armor in those cases. And honestly, it means that you're not relying on your side gunners to do much work for you. Even though you may have pulled some of the responsibility away from them because you're not in a land ship, you're in a heavy tank, so they only have machine guns. You still do need those guys to survive in a heavy tank, and that can kind of be dangerous. It's basically relying on other people at any time in this game unless you know them. I can't believe I missed this shot. I feel like that should have hit. But yes, I love tanks. I will fucking just try to get a tank every single round because people will sit on the spawn screen waiting for those things once the initial tokens are taken up. So you have to be pretty quick on the draw a lot of the time to not get one of the first tanks, but get one of the subsequent tank tokens that pop up. And you'll see me get into tanks plenty throughout the multiplayer videos, but if there are more skilled tank pilots around, I will stay right out of them. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.